Welcome to today's 5 Good Minutes on the 10 Commandments. Today we'll be considering the 4th commandment with Russ Brasher.
Well, hello, folks, and welcome to the 5 Good Minutes podcast. My name is Russ Brasher. I'm on staff at our Wexford campus of Orchard Hill, and I get the privilege of being your host over the next 5 days. And we're continuing in a series where we're looking at each of the 10 commandments. And this week, we find ourselves looking at the 4th commandment. Here's what Exodus 20, starting in verse 8, tells us about the 4th commandment. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals or any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. I think if you and I were to take some time to look at the list of the 10 commandments and rearrange them and rank them in an order of importance or priority in our life, I have a feeling that both your list and mine would move the 4th commandment to the very bottom. And I think there's 2 reasons for that, at least in my own personal life, is that for me, rest is something that I'm not too familiar with. I don't have a whole lot of practice with rest. I don't have a whole lot of time for rest with my busy schedule. And it's hard for me to see that this one is as important as the rest, especially when I compare what the known consequences would be if I were to not do this particular commandment. For example, if I were to say, I don't think murder or adultery or stealing is that important, the consequences aren't that bad if I were to not do those things, I would be a fool. But then when we look at the 4th commandment, to remember the Sabbath, to have it a priority in our lives to rest, we look at that one and go, not only is that kind of hard for us to even wrap our minds around what that should look like, but we probably don't hold it as important or see it as a priority because we don't always feel what the consequences could be of not remembering to do the Sabbath. So I think a good place for us to start this week is remembering the words of Jesus in Matthew 7, starting in verse 24, where he says to us, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock." And I think this is where we get a glimpse of why the 4th commandment is so important. We might not feel the consequences of forgetting to rest until all of a sudden life comes at us. The rains and the wind beat against our life, and because we haven't remembered to rest, we aren't able to respond to them. And if we do respond, we respond in a foolish way instead of wise. We know that God wanted to model rest, that after 6 days of creating everything that we know to be true, including us, God even chose to rest and remember the Sabbath. We see this in Genesis 1 and 2. We also see it mentioned again when we look at the 4th commandment in Exodus 20, verse 11. So my questions for us today are this. How would you rank the importance or priority of rest in your life right now? And my second question would be, what would it take for the importance and priority of rest in your life to be elevated to its rightful place? How can you begin to remember the Sabbath? Like the wise man that Jesus mentions, take God's words, this commandment, and begin to make it a part of your daily, weekly routine because you understand how important it is to rest. Otherwise, when the storms come, we could be in trouble.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out all our content and podcasts on Orchard Hill Plus. You can find that and so much more on our website or the Orchard Hill app.